everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Playthrough. I'm Dr. J, and today we're going to be learning how to play Blood Rage, a game from CMON. You might have heard of it before. It's a pretty popular game. Remember, if you're listening on audio only, go ahead and check out the videos that go along with this. You can find those at theplaythru.net, along with our other content. And if you already know how to play the game Blood Rage, you can go ahead and click the link above, and it'll take you to the discussion video that goes along with this. All right, so let's dive in and let's learn how to play Blood Rage. So let's first look at the board, because this is where everything in the game of Blood Rage happens. So if you'll see, the board is split up into several different areas, and the areas are kind of in their own unique little zones. So you've got Mannheim, which is the yellow areas, Jotunheim, which is the blue, and then Alfheim, which is the gray areas. And in the middle, you've got Yggdrasil, which is a unique area, and we'll talk about what makes that unique a little later on. If you see in each of the areas, there are little circles here that represent villages, and then there's a token in the middle of it, and the tokens vary. There's a few different kinds, and those will come into play a little later as well. What the circles mean is that's how many units you can have in each of those areas. So if we have some warriors in there, for instance, you can only have as many in there as there are spaces. The middle is different. Yggdrasil is different because that can have any number of figures. There's no limit to the number that can be in there. And then these areas on the outsides of the map in the ocean, those are fjords, and that's only for boats and for the lucky player who happens to get the sea monster figure in the game, if the sea monster is even in play during the game. All right, so let's go over and look at the sort of round tracker board over here. This tells us the phases that we go through when we play the game. So if you see here, there's a deck of cards for 3 different ages. And what you'll do is you'll go through each of these actions each age. So the first thing you do is you take the deck of cards, and depending on how many players there are, you'll deal out a number of cards to each player. And then what you do is you draft those cards. So once you get dealt cards, you'll look at them, you'll pick one, and then you'll pass them to the player to the left. And then once you've passed all the cards and there's no more to pass, then we move on to the action phase, which is the next part. And during the action phase, each player is going to get to take as many actions as they can, and that depends on how much rage they have. Now you might be wondering what rage is. Well, let's go ahead and look at the player board now and figure out what that is, because this is where most everything that happens in the action phase is going to be taking place. So if we look at the player board, you see here there's a bunch of different areas. There's a leader upgrade area up here, a warrior upgrade just below it. We've got clan upgrades along the top, and if you see, there's 3 spaces for those. There's an area for ship upgrades next to that. And then down here in this corner, there's space for 2 monster upgrades. If you look along the middle of the board, we have the rage track. Rage is your resources. You need it in order to perform actions. So the more you have, the better. And once you run out of rage, you can no longer take any more actions. So if you hit 0 rage, you can't even take actions that require 0 rage in order to take them. So it's an important resource to kind of manage and make sure that you do everything you want to before you spend it all. Down here, these are the clan stats. So you've got your rage, your axes, and your horns. What the rage is at the start of every round, depending on where this tracker's at, you get to start the round with that much rage. What the axes do is when you win battles, you are going to get victory points, or glory in this game, equal to the number that the token is on. And then the horns tell you how many units you can have out on the board. So starting out, you can only have up to 4 units on the board. So you need to raise these tracks in order to do that. And we'll talk about how you raise those stats coming up. And then finally, along the bottom of the board is one of the most important things. This tells you the actions that you can take during the action phase. And we'll go through them one at a time and explain what they are. So first is Invade. Now the rage cost to invade, and invading is just putting a character out on the board. The rage cost is whatever this little red symbol is in the corner. So if you see here on the warrior upgrade, it's initially 1. The leader is 3, but if you see down here, the leader invades for free, and the ships are 2. Now let's look at some of the cards, because some of the cards can change that. So, for instance, there's leader upgrade cards that you can put down here, and this gives your leader special powers. There's warrior upgrades like this one. This will also give your warrior special powers. And then there's the monster upgrades. And it's important, we'll kind of include invade and upgrade all in this one discussion here, because the cost to upgrade a card, putting these cards down here, costs the exact same as the cost to invade. The difference is when you upgrade, so when you upgrade a monster, for instance, so the dwarf chieftain, he costs 2 to upgrade. Well, actually, he costs no rage to upgrade or invade. That's his special ability. We'll look at the leader up here. So this upgrade costs 3. Whenever you upgrade a unit, you get to instantly put that figure out on the board. So if I upgrade my leader, I get to instantly put my leader out somewhere on the board. If I do it with the dwarf chieftain, then I do the same thing. I take the dwarf chieftain and I put him on the board. The sea monster, for example, costs 3 rage in order to upgrade. When you upgrade him and put him on the board, you get to instantly put him out one time. But if he dies and you want to put him out in a later round, you have to pay the rage cost to invade with him again. So that's invading and upgrading. Next is marching. Now what this is it's basically just moving your units from one area to another area. So, for instance, again, if I have 3 units in Elwagar up here, I can pay 1 rage and I can move them from that area to any other area where there's enough space for them. If there were only 2 spaces open somewhere else, I could take 2 of them and move them. I don't have to move them all. But it's that simple. You just pay a rage and you can move them anywhere. You can even move them to the middle. Now you'll notice that since Yggdrasil doesn't have any circles in it, you can't actually invade, meaning take a unit and put it on the board into Yggdrasil. The only way to get in there is by marching or later on when somebody pillages it. So the next action you can take is a quest. So again, if we look at the cards, there's some cards that are quest cards, they're green like this one here. Now whenever you want to take a quest action, you take the card and you put it face down just over your clan symbol here, and it just stays there until we go to the quest phase later on in the game. It doesn't cost any rage to play a quest, so if you have them, you might as well put them down. And that's all that the quest is. And finally, the biggest part of the game, in my opinion, the biggest action you can take, and that's pillaging an area. And this is where all the player interaction comes from. You'll notice on the board here, it says that the cost to pillage is free. It doesn't cost anything to pillage an area. So we'll do an example of how pillaging works. So let's pillage Elwagar here. So let's say this area has 2 blue warriors, 1 yellow warrior, and a red leader in it. And the red player decides on their turn that they want to pillage Elwagar. What that means is they're trying to upgrade this clan stat, whatever one is in the area on the token. In this case, it's axes. They want to upgrade their axes. So what happens is every player that's in there is going to play a battle card from their hand. If they don't have one, then they have to put a card down. And the battle card you add to the strength of the units that are already there. So we look at the board here. Warriors are worth 1 point, and leaders are worth 3. So in this scenario here, before the battle begins, the yellow player is going to have 1 strength, the blue player is going to have 2, and the red player is actually going to have 5 because they've got a ship that's touching it in the fjord, and they've got a leader, so that's 3 and 2. And then they're each going to play a battle card face down, flip them over, and then resolve whatever it is. And some of the battle cards have unique abilities. We won't go over those, but this number is what's added to it. So if the yellow player played this, they'd have a total strength of 3. If the red player played it, they'd have a total strength of 7. Another interesting thing about pillaging is if, for instance, there was an open space there, and the red player again decided to pillage, we go around the table in turn order, and we give other players an option to come in and take part of this battle. It's called the call to arms. So if, for instance, the brown player, it goes around and nobody wants to move in there, and the brown player gets their turn, they can move a unit from any touching area in there and participate in the battle. This is very important because if at some point in the game, let's say a player wants to pillage an area and there's nobody there, this gives all these other players an opportunity to move in and to try to challenge them and to stop them from getting those clan stat upgrades. And like I said before, the middle, Yggdrasil, there's no unit limit. The reason why that's so important is because it's touching every other outside area. If a player decides to pillage Yggdrasil, all the players, if they wanted to, could move all their units on the board, except for their ships, into Yggdrasil to challenge. And the benefit to pillaging Yggdrasil is that you get to raise each of your clan stats by 1 instead of just one of them if you successfully pillage. Only the person who initiates the pillage is going to get the clan stat, but whoever ends up winning the battle, whether they started the pillage whether they took the pillage action or not, is going to get victory points based on where their axes are at. And that can be a big way to get points later on. So again, during the action phase, you just take actions until everybody passes. I didn't mention, if a unit dies in a combat like this, so let's say in this instance here with this battle, the red player wins, all the other players' figures are going to go to Valhalla over here, and that means that they cannot be used until the round is over. So you have to make sure that you don't end up losing all of your warriors to Valhalla before the end of the round. So again, play until everybody's rage is gone, and then we go over here and we move this token to the next step, and it says discard down to 1 card. So if you have any cards left over in your hand at the end of a round, you get to keep 1 of them, and the rest have to get discarded. Then we go to the quest phase and we check to see if anyone has completed a quest. So like this quest that I had played earlier, it says widespread, and it says have the most strength in at least 2 different provinces. So I would look at the board and say, okay, do I have the most strength in 2 different provinces? Well, actually, I do, because I have a ship here. Ships count as 2, and it's considered to be in both of those areas. I would get the reward for this quest. Now, you get victory points based on whatever number is up in the corner, and they always let you raise one of your clan stats by 1. So it's really good to try to complete quests. Then we go to the next thing here, and you'll see these tokens. This one has Analong, the name of one of the areas on it. That area is going to get destroyed in Ragnarok, and that's what this token on the board means. So whenever an area is destroyed in Ragnarok, if there's any units left in it, they get taken off, as well as the tokens. And from now on, that area can no longer hold any units. That's out of the game. And what that essentially does is it shrinks the map as you play through the game. And then finally, the last one is Release from Valhalla. All the units in Valhalla go back to their respective owners' reserves, and they can be played again. There's some quests that have to do with releasing from Valhalla. There's some that have to do with controlling areas. There's some that have to do with units dying. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, and it kind of adds to the variety of the game. One thing that I didn't mention is the clan upgrade area up here. So if you'll notice, there's 3 spots for that. There's several different clan upgrades. There's lots of them, and you try to find the ones that synergize well with each other. Anytime you take a clan, you pay for a clan upgrade, you put it up here. If you ever have 3 and you want to play a new one of any upgrade, if any of these upgrade spots are full and you want to play a new one, you have to make sure that you discard one of your existing clan upgrades. Quick note before we end here, just know that the miniatures that you get in the base game don't actually look like this. They're just a generic gray color. Russ was kind enough to paint these for me. And that's how you play Blood Rage. Thanks for joining us for this video on how to play Blood Rage. If you want to check out what the rest of the group thought about the game, you can go ahead and click on the video, and it takes you to the discussion portion of it. And make sure you head on over to the playthru.net to check out our other content. Thanks, guys.